All right, all right, all right, all right. Are we doing this? Let me hit record on this thing. There we go. All right. Come on down, fam. I'm looking at your chat. I'm going to pull you up over here so I can see that ass. There it is. All right. Come on down. Who all is here? Let me get you guys in my field of vision. Annette and Erica and Chris Martin and Shelly Valenzuela. Yoo-hoo! Stephen Carlton. Ray family, locals fam in the house. Nice. We're on YouTube today, but I've shared on Facebook and YouTube and locals. So we bring it all down to the center, the alt middle, if you will. Lordy, can I get an amen on the alt middle? Guys, not going to lie, went out last night during the Super Bowl to a Korean restaurant with my family. We don't watch sports, and the Super Bowl was on the telly. And I'm not going to lie, it was the fourth quarter, and I was actually quite interested. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. I see the appeal. I do. So even I can change my mind about things. I can become interested in things that I had no idea I might be interested in, and now I'm going to become a cave-dwelling football lunatic, which I really want to do. Jason in Flagstaff says, did somebody say tacos? Dude. I said Korean food, but they can make tacos too, okay? It's racist to think they can't. Let's see, petition to rename it Locos. Dude, I like that too. Amen, Jimmy C. Watching Everything and Nothing on Prime. I don't know what that is, but I need to know what that is, Annette. Tell me more. Ball Boys, which restaurant? I need more places to eat. Ball Boys, are you in the yay? This place is called, what's it called? Soon's Tofu. SOON''S. It is dope Korean food. I like their cold buckwheat noodles. It's called Naengmyeon, I think. I saw a documentary on it on Netflix, and I was like, I must have these noodles. And now I'm hooked. They're weird, but you'll love them. Amen, Brother Z says 601 rolls 3. Ashley Libby says, yay, Rams. Yeah, they won. Although I was rooting for the Bengals just because I just, LA seems too big to fail, and I always root for the underdog. I'm at home in bed, got E. coli from Costa Rica. Oh no, Kara N. Oh, that's a unique form of suffering. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to hear that. Okay, check it out though. So I just got off the phone with Logan. We were talking about, I don't know, awakening. And now I'm in a headspace, man, because we were going down the rabbit hole and talking about how there's a sense of you can have a sense of presence and even non-dual experience where you are the world and, it's all out here and it's also you and so on. And that's something that I've been able to touch into not often. But there's another way to kind of get to the root of identity. And that is actually turning attention inwards. So at the root of what is actually aware, this kind of inquiry, what's doing the thinking, what's looking through my eyes, what is the source of this emotion that I'm feeling, right? Because it's kind of like thoughts. When you watch thoughts, they kind of arise from it's almost like made out of the consciousness in the room. Thoughts are the same stuff. But emotion feels a little different. It feels a little deeper. You have to kind of turn attention in and back in a way. It's very hard to talk about, but you know it when you do it. When you really dive into an emotion and all the alarms are saying, don't look here, don't look here, don't look here, right? Trying to pull you back into thought or pull you out into this. But going and looking back at where is this emotion coming from? What's feeling this emotion? What is thinking this thought? What's aware of this thought? What's aware at all? And going there. And then things get interesting, right? And that's a place we're not really taught or encouraged to look. In fact, I think our ego minds try to pull us out of that space because it has this kind of void-like quality, which can be very disconcerting to the mind. And the mind can say nothing about it. It can know very little about it, but you can dive in. So we were talking about that. I'm curious what you guys think. Sharon H. Began transcendental meditation in 1970. No fooling. Love listening to your awakening. Dude, I need all the help I can get. I have a lot of imposter syndrome talking about this stuff, but the truth is, I was talking with Logan about it, it's kind of like we're talking about a shared, common, universal truth, and we're all trying to tap into it in our own way, right? Whatever the path is, we're trying to tap into it. And so I need to get over this like concern about like not knowing what I'm talking about, because you can't know what you're talking about, but you can be what you're talking about. You can experience it. You can inhabit it. You can point at it. You can be pointed, right? You can let kind of the universe show you what it is, actually, if you're willing to be unguarded and get out of the house of mirrors that is reflective thought, kind of going to thought, going to thought, going to thought. You can drop out of that. Hey, what's up, Ms. Basman? Emotion, processing, finding, tracking, etc., different for men and females. I don't know. Probably on a superficial level. I think on the deepest levels, on the deepest authentic levels, there's no male and female. There's no gender. That's a construction, right? Of like this meat and the thoughts. But emotion, raw emotion, is something even more primitive, more primal, I think. And you can dive into the space that emotions arise from, really inhabit them. And that's a practice in itself. So we were talking about, I told Logan to remind me to keep doing that, because I think that's where, for me, that's where the obstruction is the most prominent, is there's a fear of that. And so you try to focus, like during meditation, I try to focus here on this expansive presence and consciousness. Everything is made of this fluid awareness, this kind of awakeness. But what about looking deep here, actually diving back into the source of that, the root of identity? Where am I? What is I? Who is me? It gets grammatically challenging. Shannon's here. Isn't that the self? Isn't the self an imposter simply? Oh my gosh. Ooh, that's right. If you're talking about imposter syndrome, who's the imposter? The ego. The ego feels not good enough. The ego feels insufficient. The ego feels separate. The ego feels like it shouldn't be talking about whatever. That's ego. Egoic. Imposter syndrome is the small self feeling smaller. So what's the true self? What's the no self? What's the source? What's the ground of all being, right? I guess the idea is to look there. So that's what I'm working on now, is trying to look in at the source of that and really feel into that. Put your mind there. Yeah, it gets a little scary because it feels almost like there's a wall there saying, hey, that's enough, right? Which means you better look. That's where you need to look. That's where you need to look. See what you really are. Kathy says, yep. Says source. Yep. Keely, we're talking about just the nature of reality. Yes, lose the ego, Jimmy C. Well, and that's the thing, is like the ego is just a pattern of thought and conditioning. It's like a weather pattern that is made of a substance that reflects itself. That's thought. So when that weather pattern, when attention is kind of bound in that weather pattern, we think we're the pattern. We think we're the separate self with this, problems and history and future and all of this and story and belief and insecurity and all of that. But it can be seen through. You don't get rid of ego ever. There's nothing wrong with ego. It's a benign weather pattern. What's wrong is there's nothing even wrong there. What happens to many of us, most of us, is that Erica's been a supporter for 2 years. That's awesome. Thank you, Erica. We lose sight of what that is arising from, which is maybe our true nature. which is so beyond ego that it would make ego feel really bad. And in fact, because ego's designed, it's almost like an evolved thing, a pattern of energy that keeps us feeling a little separate, fighting for our rights, fighting for our story, fighting for our suffering. We have a right to suffer, right? I'm going to keep suffering because that's my identity. And it's like, okay, that's one way to be. And if you want to be that way, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's unacceptable to you, if it's been the source of all misery for you in your life, ultimately, which if you really look at it, then investigate. Where is that ego coming from? What's aware of those thoughts and beliefs? What's the source of that awareness? Look there. And when Logan and I were talking, it's unlikely you're going to find it out here. You really have to turn attention inward and dive deep into the source of this. And that feels very different than what you're used to. Although for many, it's a coming home. It's a remembering, what it was like to be a child, or what it was like to be in a flow state, lost, where you lose yourself. And it's just that. Kathy Hansen says true nature equals awakening. Right. It's an identity, a fundamental identity shift. Kelly says, I wish more people could get more into their true nature. It's such a beautiful place. I mean, all of this is perfect. All of this is as it is. It's just, it all comes down to suffering. Like, this human suffering piece. Like, what is that? Why do we suffer? We resist what is, we put distance, we trap ourselves in thought, and it's apparent. It's not real. It's like, it's an illusion in a way, but that illusion feels like suffering. And so if that's something that you want to see through, then you have to do the work. You have to turn attention back inwards at the root of what you are. Go, well, what am I? What is it that's suffering? And look there. And the more you look, the more you look, the more you look. And that's where shifts happen, right? You're not going to find, well, even that says too much, right? It's more a question of the looking. Do the looking, put the work in, look at emotion, dive into emotion, inhabit emotion, instead of being trapped in what we feel. We feel like we're feeling emotion. Actually, what we're feeling is thoughts and beliefs and resistance to emotion. What happens when you go to the source of emotion? You go right inward and feel that emotion. Where's it coming from? What's it arising from? What's it going into? Where is it? What is it? Who's feeling it? Look there. See what happens. Maybe it gets really silent, very still. Maybe it feels like it's in motion, emotion, energy in motion. Gail says, Eckhart Tolle is deep. Love the power of now. Eckhart is the gateway drug. He's pointing at deep, deep truth, and he's doing it in a very accessible way. He's doing it in a self-help kind of way, which is why people buy books. It's beautiful, actually. A lot of spiritual people look down on Eckhart. Oh, it's pop spirituality and so on. Nope. Listen to him. He's pointing from void. He calls it the unmanifest. He says, basically what he points at when he says unmanifest is what I'm calling void, or what I'm calling unborn, or what I'm calling the ground of being, that empty aliveness from which everything comes. Where is that emotion coming from? Where is consciousness itself emerging from? And you can look, and it's beyond the mind's ability to grasp. So you have to let go of knowing and drop into being, into feeling into what that is. or isn't. It's paradoxical at that level. It just becomes, but it's there. It's real. It's as real and self-validating as anything that you can experience or not experience. It's not even calling it an experience. It's a deep. That's where the imposter syndrome kicks in, because you can't talk about it, right? Cindy says, staying right here. Past has pain, remembering. Future has pain, imagination. Right now is the perfect peace. This is the first step for me. My heart rate drops. I'm still in my mind. This is a miracle. So that actually what Cindy's pointing at, I think, is actually the most simple and direct way to drop into presence, which means now. Drop out of mind and into presence, and it feels like mind expands into the whole room, and it's all just this right now. And it's exquisite relief and a kind of a peace, a silence, a kind of a bliss. And that's beautiful. And I often try to point to that. Sometimes I do that in the public shows. There's an even deeper silence that all of this presence actually radiates from and is made of and is interpenetrated with. The unmanifest, the unborn, the ground of being, the dark face of God, whatever you want to call it. Any name you have for it can't even begin to describe it. It's more a pointer. You know, we only have words. So we can feel internally, but then if we try to talk about it, we have to dualize it and make a subject and an object out of it, make a thing out of it, which it is not. It's everything and nothing. So language starts to fall into paradox. Jackie says, I've studied many ways. The journey has been amazing. Dr. Joe Dispenza's work has taken me deeper than I could ever imagine. The void continues to the me to true freedom. I'm so glad you're on that path. Keep sharing what your experience is. Erica Black says, I just want to slip into a void and disappear. So who is it that wants that? Who's aware of the thought that says, I want to slip into a void and disappear? Look for that. Look for that who. Who's thinking that thought? Gail says, being newer to meditation and mindfulness, I get just the flash of that powerful awareness. Dude, that's all you need. It's self-validating. You go, ooh. And it's a rabbit hole that just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. What I'm talking about now is like, it's the bedrock of reality in a way, but it's all one thing. So it's just levels of how you talk or experience it, but it's all one thing. You're experiencing it now. You're experiencing the unborn, the unmanifest, because you are that, manifesting as form. And the form itself is impermanent and only now. And the form itself is structured into a world of space and time by thought, by perceptual filters, very subtle levels of human thought. That's what Donald Hoffman calls our interface, our human interface of reality looks like this, through the filters of human thought and the mind. But the raw stuff is just emerging from void, radiating now outside of space and time, eternal. And somehow human mind turns that into this. It's really quite astounding. Ashley Stewart, one thing I'll say is that in the past little bit, I can't be inauthentic anymore. That can be a hindrance at work. I have a lot of problems with that myself, Ashley. It's really a problem, actually. It's not a problem. Nothing's a problem. But here's my problem with it. I have trouble being inauthentic, which means I tell people sometimes what I think, but I don't sometimes take enough time to do it in a compassionate way. And then I feel emotions like shame and regret and these kind of time-based, thought, belief-based emotions, like I'm not a good person, why am I so mean, this kind of thing, and then it becomes suffering. Whereas true authenticity comes when we really drop all that. It comes from a place of love, right? Like unconditional love. Like we can be our authentic selves while really conveying that it's not about anybody. Like it's not a problem with them. It's not a problem with you. It's not a problem with you. There's no me. It's just this, and I'm going to be as authentic as I can, right? It's tricky, and yet it's not. Stephen Brown says, if you can let go, you eventually will be found. Yes, it's really hard. It's really hard, and yet it's not. It's a kind of a intentional surrender, which is a paradox. You intend and it takes effort, but then it requires a surrender, a letting go, a falling back into what you are, into the source of what's looking through your eyes right now. Like, have you thought about that? Like we think about our eyes as this mechanistic thing, like, oh, it's taking light and it's focusing it on a retina and it's turning it into electrical impulses and they're going up nerves and then it's going into the brain, whatever that is, and it's processing it in some way. And that's how we see. So that's great. That's wonderful as far as it goes, as a mechanistic explanation of the electrical impulses and so on and the wiring. What is seeing? What's actually having the experience of sight right now? The colors and the shapes and the light and the dark and the shadows and the textures. What's experiencing that? Try to find what you are. What is it that is having that experience? Look there. Is it if you find it something that's a thought, it can't be you, because you don't come and go. Thoughts do. Is it an emotion? Can't be, because emotions come and go. Is it a sensation? Can't be, because sensations come and go. Keep looking. If there's a thought, accept it and let it go. If there's a sensation, feel it and come back to looking. Looking for what's looking. What is looking through your eyes? And Logan gave me a hint today. He said, you don't find what's looking through your eyes out there. Even in this kind of awareness, you have to go in. You have to go in and look and look and look and look. And you may get scared. You may feel a wall. You may feel strong emotion. Feel those things and keep looking. And you'll find yourself in the space between thoughts, between experience. Stay there. Keep looking. What's there? What's awake? What is knowing? What's knowing the sound of my voice? What's knowing the sounds in the room? What's knowing what you're seeing through your eyes? What's knowing what you feel in your body? Christine says, I like that, loving authenticity. I felt it. I would love to give it more often, or more correctly, be it. Lovingly authentic. Yes. It's a relief, actually. Whereas I think many times when we think of being authentic, we're actually still not quite authentic. There's a thought-based egoic structure that's saying, I'm going to tell this person what I think because I need to be seen and heard and so on, right? And often that's our idea of authenticity. But that's still egoic. That's still inauthentic in the sense that it's a kind of it's wrapped in belief and thought. But what is authentic? Authentic is what's happening right now. It's your actual desire in this moment, right? Unfiltered and coming from this unborn, just coming. It's just emerging, right? Like it's the sum total of every single thing that's happened in the universe since the beginning. And it's just happening. That's authenticity. And it's freedom from hindrance of any kind, but yet it comes out as love, right? It doesn't come out as you murder somebody, which is weird because you think it might do that, but it doesn't. So what's the underlying nature there? What's the source of that? Keep looking. Kathy says, source is looking through our eyes and it's all connected within itself. Yup. That feels right. I told you guys when I was at that retreat, you could feel when people walked outside and the sun came out, everybody looking at the sun, turning their heads to the sun, silent, right? Meditating for 4 days. Sun breaks through the clouds. Everybody turns, closes their eyes, and you can feel it. You can feel everything looking through multiple eyes and experiencing itself. Like there's a oneness, a unity to all of it. And there's also a manyness at the same time. That's what's beautiful about it. It's indescribable, actually. Ellen says, I'm 71 now, and I'm discovering more and more how I've spent a lot of my life trying to control that which has not yet happened. Ha! I'm done with it, if only because it's exhausting. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine if our 17-year-old self could know the truth that any sense of control is a thought, it's a projection, it's an illusion, and it doesn't help you. The more you live right now from an authentic place, you can plan now. You can, as Angela says, you can order plane tickets now for your trip. You don't have to be lost in a mirror of thought to get things done. And in fact, all that does is create projection and suffering and an illusory sense of control. Right? Life will handle itself if you're there for it, if you're present for it, and you're awake for it. It will handle itself. Otherwise, we just have the illusion that we're controlling things. Man, if I just keep ruminating on the past, somehow the future will be better. What is the future even? It's now. It's never been anything but now, right? What you do now creates what we call future. So why waste it in thought? Unless it's a very specific type of thought. A non-discursive, non-self-referential thought that kind of says, oh, just had a vision of what needs to be done in order to do this, and now start doing it, right? So there's nothing wrong with planning and creative thought and those kind of things, but it's very different from this self-referential kind of loop of thought, like must control, must manage mentally, must project, like how will this look? Exhausting is the term you used, Ellen. It's exactly right. It's exhausting. Cindy says, you are fucking authentic. I'm learning every single time I listen to you. I have hope. When you become quiet and look into my eyes, something happens to my entire being. No woo-woo, something happens. Can I tell you a secret? So, when I do that, I'm not planning to do that. It just happens. I can feel all of you guys. Like, it feels like I'm talking to one person that is you, and that you are seeing me. Like, we're one thing. Like, that's what it feels like. It's crazy. And there's a little self-conscious voice in there that's like, dude, if you keep staring at this lens, they're going to turn this off because they're going to think it's frozen. But the bigger experience is just of presence, of oneness, of connection. It's love. It's a kind of love. It really is. I actually felt it profoundly in the YouTube live I did on Sunday for the main audience. So there's 1,300 people watching, and it was the end of the show. And I said, I can feel you guys, like all of you and one of you. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I can feel this. Can you feel it too? It's crazy. Like, it points again at the deepest truth, which is we're not what we think. We're this, and we're also the ground of everything. It's infinite. It's connected. And it feels like love. Not romantic love. Love with a capital L. It's Valentine's Day. I just realized that. Oh my gosh, we're talking about love. See how the universe works? Not the kind of love that sells postcards or candy or reservations at the fancy restaurant, or all the egoic striving that we think is love and possession of another and control of another and codependence and strife and struggle and ego. It's the love that makes up everything, the unconditional acceptance of each other's authentic being. Man, it's almost too much, you know? Ray Family says, I aspire to get there. My mental status post-COVID is slush. I feel it. I feel it too. We're all suffering. You know, that's another thing. That's another thing. You know what we have in common? All of us, suffering. We like to talk about suffering like it's some evil thing, but the truth is, it is what binds us in this life. Like Buddha said it, life is suffering, right? Jesus suffered on the cross for our sins. This is a through line throughout all spiritual traditions, the nature of suffering. Because we can feel each other's suffering, feel our own suffering, that's love. Because you have this boundless acceptance. We're all the same. And we want the suffering to be better. Oh, Keely, I'm glad. Lucy says, thanks so much for talking about this. Even though most people don't want to learn about mindfulness and all the benefits that come with being present. Yeah, you know, again, it's kind of oversold by like hospital administrators and people like that are kind of looking at productivity, this kind of external mindfulness. But really, it's so much different than that. It is the deepest inward reflection that realizes there's no in and out. Like, this is all just one thing. And that doesn't mean we don't dive back into mind and get lost in ego and lost in belief and thought and emotion and all that. Yeah, that's the human condition. You have to be pretty damn realized to not have that happen. So accept that suffering happens, but that we can do something about it. And there's not even a we doing it. It's just the nature of everything, that there's unconditional love. That's just, you just got to tap right in. It's right there, and it connects us all because it's the same. Dawn Hopkins says, I want to have a COVID grief party and celebrate what we all lost. That's beautiful. I love that. That's great. It's almost like we've gone further down the rabbit hole of isolation that social media started. COVID made it worse. We can grieve that. We can grieve the humans that were lost, grieve the children who are orphans or have lost a loved one or a grandparent, grieve for our freedoms that have been impacted, grieve for our children, 2-year-olds who are wearing masks, whether they, work or not, I don't know, but we can grieve that they have to do that. Right? You can grieve for the businesses that have gone away forever because of the economic impact. You can grieve for parts of the world where the suffering was so immense, like India, Iran in the early days. I mean, there's been 2 years of intense suffering, not just from the COVID, but from our response to the COVID. And we should grieve that, because that's part of integrating that pain, accepting it authentically, and going to the next thing, which means what happens authentically is hopefully more adaptive and more loving than what happened before. Hi, Julia. Kathy Hansen says, as a social worker, I practice mindfulness techniques within myself and when I'm working with patients and families. Absolutely, right? It's so beautiful. Mindful social workers, case managers, like, you almost need it, right? How can you even cope? Ashley, grief for all the lost time with those we love and will never get back. Absolutely. But you know what? There's today. There's today. That's why I did the video on Sunday. I'm like, stop all of this now. Omicron has passed through. People still get sick and so on, but you can get vaccinated. You can wear a mask or not, but let's get back to each other. It's time now. That's my opinion, strongly. Sarah Lisa, speaking of grief, those who pray, please, for a friend who's pregnant and hospitalized with COVID. Ooh. Jason, grieve for the people who got themselves addicted to the political narratives on either end of COVID. I'm afraid this is going to be a long-term problem. Ooh, that's an ongoing grief. But you know what? We can do something about that. We're doing it here. We're doing our best here. So this is something we can feel a lot of love in the face of suffering, right? That's part of what we do, you guys. Like, we're together on this. I'm glad you pointed that out. First step, says Trish, acknowledge the pain of loss, then we can celebrate the birth of the new. Beautiful. Beautifully put. Ball boys. The movies always show CDCs in every country absolutely kicking ass, and this last 2 years shattered every Hollywood stained glass on that topic. Yeah, we can grieve for that. Grieve for the trust that was lost. The belief in institutions that's been lost. Maybe we can regain it if they do the right thing. But we can grieve for the loss. For me, that's a grief. I used to think CDC could do no wrong. It's rough. Erica says, every time you get quiet, Ashley asks me why you are broken. Children really know their stuff. Ashley, it's not so much broken. It's actually coming back together is silence. Sometimes broken is talking. I learned that on Silent Retreat. I'm glad, Candace, that you got what I was sending. Ball boys, the real Fauci ouchie was in my heart. Like figuratively, but also literally. Oh my God, that's amazing. Ball boys may well be my favorite commenter when we go on YouTube. I'm going to just say that. I'm not supposed to play favorites, but you have a sensibility that's very close to my own heart. Kathy Hansen, silver lining, exposure to flaws in our systems. Yes. Hopefully we learn from it, right? By the way, I went back and put in time codes on Daniel Schmachtenberger's 2.5 hour, 240-minute interview. So find a part you like and watch it if you haven't. He's a really smart guy, but it takes a few watches because it's intense. But he's pointing deep at truth. So definitely check it out if you haven't. Share it around if you don't mind. We're trying to have these conversations that are difficult, right? Really challenge people, including me. So it's good stuff. A lot of love for ball boys. Deserved love. All right. I should probably go because I do have to get ready to get my kid. I was thinking about you guys. Like, this group, Supporter Tribe, is really something special. Like, I don't care what platform you're on. I don't care if it's Facebook or YouTube or Locals or whatever, right? You guys are all the same. It's just each platform filters you through some different interface and a different kind of conditioning, but it's really the same group. Like, you guys are the best. Like, and I'm biased because we all kind of share these common basic values, right? Of what we're trying to do, even though we disagree about a bunch of different things. My favorite emails are like, man, I love you even though I disagree with a lot of stuff you're saying. That's so awesome, right? And I think there are a lot of people in this group that are like that. Like, we love each other even though, man, I may not agree with what so-and-so's saying, or that's a different take on that, or I may not have said it that way, but man, the intent there is good. We're in what Schmachtenberger calls a post-cynical space here. We went from naive, where we just trust everyone, get burned really fast, cynical, where we don't trust anyone, we think the whole internet's a shit show, to post-cynical, where it's like yes and to both of those, but actually really trying to strive for, no, actually, we can get to truth with good people here and trust each other. I think it's beautiful. Yeah. Love you guys. And I appreciate that so many of you, especially on Locals, will like give these one-time donations, and you totally don't have to do that, right? But you care enough about whatever this is that it really is humbling that you do that. You absolutely don't need to, because you guys support our overhead through supporters. It's really, really, really great. And I no longer worry about things like I used to. It allows me to be authentic. Truly. Like, I don't worry about sponsors. I don't worry about speaking engagements, because that's how we used to really monetize. And the ads we run on the public shows, but for you, I try to put the ad-free stuff whenever I can on Locals or Facebook or whatever. Much more on Locals because it's much easier to do. But I'll try to make it a point of doing it on Facebook too. The problem is Facebook just never notifies people. If you're on Facebook, I do think if you're okay to move to Locals and cancel Facebook, I think that's a good idea. I really do. And there's a few reasons, but one is that I just think it's a better space, the way that the technology is set up. Yeah, the video quality is not as high and so on, and there's some stuff they work out with the app, but they're improving all the time. But it's just a better place than Facebook. And I just don't like giving Zuckerberg money. I don't think he's doing good in the world on balance, right? He's doing good with us, but not on balance. And, like, they take 30% of your $5 a month. Locals takes like 10%. They give me your emails so that if we leave Locals, I can reach out and say, hey, we're leaving Locals, we're going here, just FYI. Facebook gives you, they keep all your data and they probably sell it to people, right? Or they're using it to target ads. So in terms of the social dilemma, in terms of like a space that we create, I prefer locals. YouTube is fine, but we just don't have as much way to interact on YouTube. Like there isn't that strong community presence there. That's why I think YouTube is great on some levels, but I think locals is better for this type of vibe. But I'm still going to do locals, YouTube, and Facebook, right? So I'm not abandoning any of those things. It's just that that's my feeling, my intuition is that locals is the best spot right now. Now that could change, and then I'll tell you, right? But that's what I think. Tag Moniker says, hey, dollars are the secret sauce. It's skin in the game. Exactly. Everybody in this tribe knows that, hey, that we're paying to be here. We're supporting the creator. So we're not going to like shit in this nest that we've paid to be in, right? It's beautiful, actually. And there's an activation energy. You care enough. You're motivated enough. There's an intrinsic motivation to being here, which is wonderful. All right, guys, I love you. I really do got to go now. I'm in trouble.